The hammering began before dawn. 3 blows struck Liora Fenwick's door, driving through the cottage like a nail through a coffin lid. She woke upright, one hand cupping the curve of her 8-month belly. Frost silvered the window. The hearth had died hours ago beside the lavender-scented blanket she had sewn for her child. Liora seized the iron poker and crossed the floor. By the time she pulled open the door, the lane was empty. Snow drifted between the trees. Ravensmere Castle loomed upon its hill. A black iron nail had been driven into her door. A mourning ribbon fluttered from it. Beneath the nail, letters scarred the wood. "Leave before the child comes." Her daughter moved beneath her palm. "They will not frighten us away," Liora whispered, although fear had entered. 6 months earlier, Elias's carriage had plunged into Ravensmere quarry. No one allowed her to see his body. They brought her a sealed coffin, his broken watch, and a death certificate signed by a physician who vanished the following morning. Since then came the ribbons. By noon, hunger forced her outside. She wrapped herself in Elias's fraying coat and walked toward the village, carrying her last coins and an empty basket. Snow clung to her hem. Each step tightened something low in her body, but the flour jar contained only dust, and dignity could not be boiled into supper. The shopkeeper weighed a sack before recognizing her. "Your money is unwelcome." Liora placed the coins upon his counter. "Coins have no reputation. Their owner does." He swept them back. "Elias Fenwick stole from half this parish, then died running from justice." A woman pulled her children closer. Another stared at Liora's belly. "Perhaps he was running from what she carried," someone murmured. Laughter moved around the shop, crueler. Liora returned the coins to her purse. She would not let them watch her plead. "When the truth arrives," she said, "I hope it finds you as comfortably fed as you are today." She walked home with an empty basket and a straighter spine than her strength deserved. The light was fading when she noticed 2 boots beneath her woodpile. She raised the poker. A thin boy scrambled out, hay caught in his hair. Jonas Wren, the orphan from Ravensmere stables, looked scarcely older than 12 and frightened to bolt. "Please do not call anyone." "Why are you hiding here?" His gaze darted toward the trees. "Men from the castle watch this cottage. They said the baby must not live long enough to be named." The cold suddenly seemed to pass through Liora's bones. Jonas caught her sleeve. "And your husband did not die in the quarry. I saw him afterward. He was hurt, but he was alive." Hoofbeats broke across the field. Jonas fled through the trees before she could stop him. 2 riders appeared beyond the stone wall, their faces hidden by scarves. They watched until Liora entered the cottage, then vanished into the snow. Darkness had settled when another knock came. This time it was not a hammer but a gloved fist. Duke Alaric Ravensmere stood outside in a midnight blue greatcoat dusted with snow. At 35, he possessed the severe composure of a man accustomed to command, yet his clean-shaven face betrayed shock as he looked past her into the freezing room. "Mrs. Fenwick." "Your Grace." She did not curtsy. Her body had suffered enough bending for one day. Behind him, a servant carried food and firewood. Alaric's gaze found the empty shelves, the dismantled chair beside the hearth, and the infant gown Liora had stitched from her wedding petticoat. "I discovered 12 relief parcels locked in my steward's storeroom," he said. "Each was addressed to you. Each was marked, 'No aid for the traitor's widow.' Your name was also removed from the winter register in my aunt's hand. And guilt finally led you downhill." The accusation struck, but he did not retreat. "I accepted the report of Elias's death without examining it. That failure belongs to me." Liora thought of Jonas, the hidden riders, and a living man dragged from a wreck while Ravensmere sealed an empty coffin. "Your failure cost more than comfort." Alaric noticed the ribbon. He read the warning, and something colder than winter entered his expression. "You cannot remain here alone." "I have remained alone because everyone bearing your crest decided I should. Then I will correct it." His gaze lowered briefly to her belly, not with judgment but alarm. "You need protection, a lawful name for the child, someone no villager will challenge." His next words fell between them with the weight of a command. "You need a husband." Liora studied the powerful man framed by snow and understood that one sentence could open Ravensmere's locked doors, or bury her beside Elias's empty coffin. She placed a protective hand over her child and met the Duke's eyes. "What if this child is already yours?" Alaric went still. Then he crossed the threshold, closed the frozen door against the watching darkness, and said, "Tell me exactly what my family has done to you." Liora watched suspicion harden Duke Alaric's face and understood how her words had sounded. Outside, snow hissed against the window, Inside, his servant coaxed flame into the hearth before tactfully withdrawing. "I did not say you fathered my child," she said. "Then explain how she is mine." Liora reached beneath her collar and drew out a chain. A broken silver medallion rested against her palm, half a raven beneath the edge of a star-shaped crown. Alaric nearly stopped breathing. From inside his waistcoat he removed another fragment. The pieces joined perfectly, completing the Ravensmere crest. "My father gave me this before he died," he said. Elias received his half from his mother. The Duke's gaze lifted. "3 weeks before the quarry," Liora continued, "Elias told me he was the son your father erased." Alaric stepped away as if distance might diminish the claim. "My father had one son." One he acknowledged. The fire caught, illuminating the exhaustion beneath her defiance. She described a private marriage contracted by Alaric's father during his youth. The young woman had been dismissed when ambition demanded a wealthier bride. Her infant was placed with the Fenwicks. Elias had grown up believing charity fed him. Only after his foster mother died did he receive the medallion, letters, and a sealed baptism record naming his father. "Why become my surveyor?" Alaric asked. "To learn whether Ravensmere deserved his loyalty before asking it to recognize his blood." The answer wounded more deeply than accusation. Alaric turned toward the castle visible through frost. He remembered a fearless stable boy pulling him from beneath a fallen horse, then disappearing before thanks could become friendship. Memory supplied the boy's gray eyes and the crooked scar across one thumb, features Elias had carried as a man. "He saved my life," Alaric murmured. "Perhaps he knew who you were even then." Liora explained the covenant Elias had discovered among the estate archives. If the ruling duke died without a direct child, certain protected lands could pass to the proven descendant of another legitimate Ravensmere son. Cedric Vale, Alaric's cousin and presumed heir, would lose farms, trusts, and the influence attached to them if Elias's identity became public. "The baptism record proved everything," she said. "It disappeared the night Elias vanished." Alaric closed his hand around the joined medallion. "And you believe my cousin killed him?" "I believe someone buried an empty coffin and expected me to bury every question with it." Glass exploded inward. Alaric reached Liora before the falling shards did, turning his body between her and the window. A stone rolled across the floor, wrapped in black ribbon. The servant rushed inside, but the darkness beyond the cottage revealed no attacker. Alaric untied the message. The child must never enter Ravensmere. Whatever disbelief remained vanished from his expression. "Gather what you require. I will not be imprisoned in your castle. Nor will you be left where cowards can reach you through a window." His voice softened without losing authority. "Come as my guest, Mrs. Fenwick. Leave whenever you choose, after I can promise the road is safe." Liora looked at the threat, then at the cradle waiting beside the cold wall. Pride had kept her standing, but pride could not shield a newborn from stones. She packed Elias's letters, the unfinished blanket, and one serviceable gown. Ravensmere Castle received her beneath blazing lamps and disapproving faces. Lady Morwenna Vale descended the marble staircase in black silk. Beside her stood Lord Cedric, handsome, composed, and amused. Lady Sabine Ashford watched from the drawing-room archway, diamonds gleaming at her throat. "You brought the scandal inside," Morwenna told Alaric. "The scandal was already here." Morwenna ordered an attic chamber prepared. Alaric instead gave Liora the blue suite adjoining his apartments. The choice silenced the entrance hall but sharpened every stare. At dinner, Morwenna examined Liora as though poverty were an infectious stain. "Can you prove Elias married you?" "The parish register can." Cedric raised his wineglass. "Registers record ceremonies, not fathers. A widow may call any convenient child legitimate." Liora's fingers tightened beneath the table, but she refused him the satisfaction of lowered eyes. Alaric removed his ducal ring and placed it beside her plate. Gold struck porcelain with a decisive note. "Until the truth is known, Mrs. Fenwick and her child stand beneath my protection. Any insult against them is an insult against me." Morwenna paled. Cedric's smile remained, yet his glass cracked beneath his tightening hand. Only Sabine moved, shifting her chair nearer Liora's. Hours later, Liora entered the blue suite and locked the door. A key waited upon her pillow with a note in Alaric's hand. "The adjoining door opens from your side alone." For the first time in months, she lay beside a burning fire. Safety almost reached her. Then the outer handle began to turn. Slowly, patiently. Liora rose, shielding her belly as a shadow darkened the gap beneath the door. The lock trembled once. From the corridor came a breath, a scrape and a child's terrified whisper. "Mrs. Fenwick, please let me in. He knows I saw your husband alive." Liora turned the key and pulled Jonas inside. Snow streaked his coat, although no outside door stood nearby. "How did you reach this corridor?" He pointed toward a carved panel behind the tapestry. "Servants' passage. The old parts of Ravensmere have more hidden roads than honest ones." Before Liora could question him, the adjoining door opened. Alaric entered carrying a lamp, his expression sharpening when he saw the boy. Jonas recoiled. Liora stepped between them. "He came because someone is hunting him." Alaric closed the door. "Then he will be safer telling us why." The Duke's restraint steadied Jonas. Haltingly he described the night of the quarry wreck. Elias's carriage had struck the barrier, yet men were waiting below before it fell. Jonas had followed after recognizing Cedric's coachman among them. "Mr. Fenwick was alive," he said. His face was bruised, but he spoke. They covered his mouth and carried him toward the old hunting lodge. From his pocket Jonas produced a brass button stamped with Cedric's crest. He had torn it from one man's coat while hiding beneath the carriage. Alaric examined it beneath the lamp. Doubt remained in his eyes, but it no longer resembled disbelief. It resembled betrayal. Tamsin Reed arrived minutes later, summoned through the bell beside Alaric's bed. The broad-shouldered housekeeper listened without interruption, then concealed Jonas inside the unused nursery where she once tended Ravensmere children. "Lady Morwenna counts spoons," she warned. "She will certainly count frightened boys." Before sunrise, Tamsin drove Alaric and Liora toward the abandoned lodge in a plain utility carriage. Bare branches clawed at the gray sky. Liora kept one hand beneath her belly, feeling her daughter stir whenever the wheels struck frozen ruts. "You should have remained at the castle," Alaric said. "Elias left the clue for those who would understand it. You are not yet among them." Instead of taking offense, he almost smiled. The lodge crouched within a stand of dead firs. Its door had been forced recently, splintered wood pale against weathered boards. Inside, the air smelled of mold and medicinal herbs. Tamsin identified dried valerian and laudanum residue beside a narrow bed. A blood-stained bandage lay behind the stove. Liora found a cracked spectacle lens and recognized the unusual green tint Elias used for headaches. "He was here," she whispered. Alaric crouched near the bed. 4 words had been scratched into the floorboards, followed by another beneath them. "The ledger is beneath. The saint who has no face." Footsteps crunched outside. The lodge door slammed and a key turned. Through the filthy window, Liora glimpsed a rider striking their carriage horse loose before disappearing between the trees. Smoke began curling from beneath the stove. Tamsin smothered the burning rags with her cloak while Alaric drove a chair through the rear window. He cleared the jagged glass, then helped Tamsin outside. When Liora tried to climb through, a sharp tightening seized her abdomen. Alaric caught her before she fell. The child? Only protesting this dreadful excursion. Her attempt at levity failed beneath her frightened breath. He carried her through the window and did not release her until Tamsin confirmed the pain was exhaustion, not labor. They returned on foot until an estate wagon found them. Alaric supported Liora without possessiveness, offering strength while allowing her to choose how much she accepted. At breakfast, her bell went unanswered. Morwenna had instructed the servants that attending a suspected impostor encouraged insolence. 20 minutes later, Alaric entered bearing a tray himself. The eggs were cold and the toast had been burned nearly black. "Did the kitchen declare rebellion?" Liora asked. "The kitchen wisely allowed me to discover my limitations." Her laughter surprised them both. As she ate, Alaric confessed that Elias had once pulled him from beneath a fallen horse. He remembered the stable boy calling him Rook, a childhood nickname no servant should have known. "My brother saved me," he said, the word brother unfamiliar but reverent. "I never even asked his name." "Then find him," Liora answered. "Ask now." That afternoon, Morwenna filled the winter luncheon with noblewomen eager to inspect Ravensmere's scandal. They criticized Leora's altered gown and spoke across her as though pregnancy had erased her hearing. Lady Sabine crossed the room and deliberately occupied the chair beside her. "Courage is better tailoring than silk," Sabine observed, silencing the nearest whispers. A maid suddenly entered, weeping. The late Duchess's sapphire brooch had vanished. Morwenna ordered the blue suite searched, and the jewel appeared beneath Leora's pillow wrapped in linen. Every face turned toward Alaric. He studied Liora with chilling stillness, then lifted the linen toward the light. Purple wax marked one corner, the rare sealing wax used exclusively in Morwenna's writing room. Alaric dismissed the trembling maid and offered Liora his arm before the assembled guests. "Someone inside my home is frightened of your child," he murmured as they passed Morwenna's bloodless face. "I intend to discover why." Behind them, Cedric's brass-buttoned sleeve shifted beneath the table, revealing one empty thread where its matching crest had been torn away. The evidence itself had followed them home. The missing button ended every argument Alaric might have offered himself. He ordered Cedric's movements watched. The single crest proved too little for an arrest. Instead, Alaric followed Elias's clue. The ruined family chapel stood beyond Ravensmere's gardens, abandoned since lightning split its bell tower. Snow lay across the broken roof, and ivy strangled saints. Liora entered beside Alaric while Tamsin guarded the path. Wind moved through empty windows, lifting the hem of Liora's cloak. "There," she said. Behind the crumbling altar stood a stone saint with smooth emptiness where its face had been. Alaric pressed against the pedestal. Nothing moved. Liora studied the floor. Elias never trusted what appeared obvious. She brushed snow from the saint's shadow and uncovered an iron ring. Together they raised a stone panel. Beneath it rested an oilskin parcel containing an ancient estate ledger. Alaric opened it with stiffened hands. Elias had copied 6 years of accounts. Columns of neat figures revealed rents collected twice, debts manufactured through false interest, and grain sold privately after being promised to hungry tenants. Relief money had flowed into companies controlled by Morwenna. Farms seized for non-payment had passed cheaply to Cedric. Beside each theft, Elias had written the family affected. Widows turned out, children withdrawn from school, laborers imprisoned for balances they never owed. "They used my seal," Alaric said. "They used your absence." The distinction offered no comfort. His signature had authorized suffering he never examined. Liora saw the moment authority ceased being armor and became a burden upon his shoulders. He turned toward the final entries. Several pages had been cut cleanly from the binding. The order to sabotage the carriage would be there, Liora said. Elias always saved his gravest conclusions for the end. Thunder rolled over the hills. Moments later, freezing rain hammered the remaining roof. A fallen tree blocked the chapel doors, trapping them while Tamsin hurried toward the castle for help. Alaric led Liora into the sheltered vestry and wrapped his greatcoat around her. They sat apart beneath a faded painted sky, the ledger between them like a third presence. "You loved him," Alaric said. It was not accusation, yet Liora heard the question beneath it. "Elias was good when goodness offered him no advantage. My father faced debtor's prison. Elias agreed to marry me and settle what he could because he wanted a home, while I needed one. That is not an answer. It is the honest one." She watched rain tremble against the shattered glass. "I loved him through loyalty, gratitude, and years of shared kindness. But ours was not the grand romance strangers now claim I betrayed. Sometimes two lonely people build shelter together. Shelter still matters even when it is not a palace." Alaric looked toward the storm. "You need not defend the shape of your grief." Her throat tightened. No villager had offered her that mercy. He spoke then of his first wife, whose sudden illness ended while he was away inspecting distant land. He had returned to rooms already stripped of her belongings. Morwenna taught him afterward that love merely gave fate a weapon. "So you made yourself untouchable," Liora said. "I made myself empty." The admission changed the silence between them. Alaric reached toward her, then stopped before contact, allowing her the choice. Liora placed her hand in his. His fingers closed carefully, offering warmth without demand. "I care what becomes of you," he said. "More than prudence permits. But I will not turn your danger or grief into an opportunity for myself." Liora had known men who disguised possession as protection. His restraint frightened her differently because it gave tenderness room to become real. The storm weakened near dusk. Servants cleared the entrance, and they returned carrying the ledger beneath Alaric's coat. The blue suite door stood open. Inside, drawers had been overturned. Elias's letters littered the carpet. The infant clothes Liora had sewn were torn, and the handmade cradle lay shattered beside the extinguished hearth. Black ribbon wound through its broken rails. Liora knelt with a sound smaller than weeping. Alaric remained beside her, his anger held so tightly that his hands shook. Something gleamed beneath a fractured board. Tamsin lifted Elias's broken pocket watch. "Impossible," Liora whispered. "I buried that with his coffin." The watch felt heavier than memory. Alaric pressed its damaged crown, and a hidden compartment sprang open. Inside lay a tiny brass key and a strip of paper covered in Elias's hurried writing. Liora unfolded it. If I am declared dead, do not believe it. Beneath those words, cramped into the remaining space, waited another warning. Trust the boy. Fear the heir. From the dark corridor came the sound of running footsteps. Alaric pursued them to the staircase, but the intruder had vanished. Only a black ribbon remained across the landing, arranged like a boundary. When Alaric returned, Liora was standing among the ruins of her child's cradle, the key clenched in her hand. Elias had not left her proof of his death. He had left directions through a conspiracy that expected her daughter never to be born. The key bore the number 17 and the initials of Ravensmere Junction. Alaric departed before dawn with Liora, Jonas, and Lady Sabine in a carriage. Tamsin remained behind to convince Morwenna that Liora was resting after the destruction of her room. "Why are you helping us?" Liora asked Sabine. The noblewoman adjusted her traveling veil. "Because Morwenna selected me to become Alaric's wife for the same reason she selected his servants. She mistakes obedience for loyalty. Yesterday when I sat beside you, she threatened my brother's debts." Alaric glanced at her. "You should have told me." "You should have noticed," Sabine replied without malice. The rebuke landed. Alaric had begun to understand that ignorance was not innocence when power made other lives his responsibility. Ravensmere Junction was almost deserted. Jonas kept watch beside the booking office while Alaric opened locker 17. Inside rested a leather document case wrapped against damp. The missing ledger pages lay on top. Beneath them waited Elias's baptism record, letters bearing the late Duke's seal, receipts for a poison, and a final envelope addressed to Alaric. The letters confirmed everything. Alaric's father had privately acknowledged Elias, then paid officials to hide the marriage that made him a Ravensmere son. The receipts connected Cedric to a tasteless compound capable of weakening Alaric gradually until his death resembled illness. Elias's missing pages described the plan. Cedric intended to become indispensable, poison Alaric over several months, then inherit before anyone questioned the decline. Elias discovered the purchases and prepared to expose him. The quarry wreck followed 3 days later. Alaric opened the personal letter. "Brother, if this reaches you, I have failed to speak while living. Protect Liora, but never mistake her gentleness for helplessness. The child is yours, not through fatherhood but through the promise our father failed to keep. Give my child the family name denied to me." The signature blurred beneath Alaric's unsteady gaze. "He expected to die," he said. "He expected betrayal," Liora answered. "Those are not the same." Back at Ravensmere, Alaric placed the evidence inside his private safe and summoned a magistrate he trusted. The man was absent until morning. 12 hours suddenly felt dangerous. Liora stood in the observatory corridor, where fading daylight touched her face through high windows. "You understand now what I meant when I said the child was yours?" "Yes." Alaric's voice carried a decision formed during the journey. "And I know how to protect you both." He lowered himself to one knee. Liora stared at him, more alarmed than moved. "Marry me," he said. "My name would end every challenge to your child. Cedric could not remove you from Ravensmere, and Morwenna could no longer touch your position. Stand up. Liora. Please." He rose and she placed distance between them. "You read a dead man's request and turned it into another duty," she said. "Elias married me because I needed rescue. I will not enter a second marriage because another honorable man cannot bear to leave me unprotected. This is not pity. Then why me? You could marry Sabine, produce an undisputed heir, and shelter my daughter without sacrificing your future." Alaric did not look away. "Because Sabine deserves to choose her life and so do I." Footsteps and distant voices moved below them, but his attention remained upon Liora. "I came to your cottage because duty accused me," he continued. "I remained because you stood hungry before a village and surrendered nothing of yourself. You protected Jonas when helping him threatened you. You challenged me when everyone in this castle had learned to flatter my blindness." Her composure wavered. "When you entered Ravensmere," he said, "it stopped feeling like a tomb. I do not want to preserve you like another object locked safely in one of its rooms. I want your judgment beside mine, your courage against mine, and your laughter returning whenever I burn the breakfast." Leora's eyes brightened, but she shook her head. "Elias may be alive. Until I know, neither of us is free to make this promise." Alaric accepted the truth without anger. "Then I will ask again only when the answer belongs entirely to you." Castle bells erupted below. Sabine hurried toward them. "Magistrates have entered the courtyard. Cedric petitioned for emergency control of the estate. He claims Alaric has lost his reason. Morwenna appeared behind her with 2 officials and a sheaf of letters. My nephew has conspired with this woman to manufacture a false heir. These prove they corresponded before Elias Fenwick's death. Liora recognized neither the handwriting attributed to her nor the wax pressed beneath it. Forgeries, Alaric said. That determination belongs to the court, Cedric replied, entering with armed estate men. Until then you will surrender your seal and Mrs. Fenwick will remain confined. The corridor seemed to narrow around Liora. A crushing pain gathered across her body, fiercer than anything at the lodge. Warmth spilled down her skirts. Tamsin pushed through the guards and caught her arm. The baby, Liora whispered. It is too early. Cedric ordered the staircase sealed before anyone could summon the physician. Alaric lifted Liora into his arms as the bells thundered overhead. Surrender your authority, a magistrate commanded. Alaric faced the men blocking the passage, with Liora trembling against him and Elias's child fighting to enter a hostile world. You may take my title by sunrise, he said. You will not take her. Alaric carried Liora away from the magistrates while Tamsin barred the corridor with her body. The physician must be summoned, Tamsin commanded. Cedric's men lowered their rifles across the staircase. No one leaves until his grace surrenders the estate seal, Cedric replied. Another pain bent Liora against Alaric's chest. His expression changed from fury to fear. Tamsin pulled open a narrow servant's door concealed behind an ancestral portrait. Follow me. They entered a passage barely wide enough for Alaric's shoulders. Sabine closed the panel behind them, then remained outside to misdirect the search. Lantern light trembled over brick while Tamsin led them downward, seeking an old tunnel to the village. They found its iron gate newly chained. Cedric prepared for this, Alaric said. Boots thundered above. Tamsin turned toward a winding stair. The observatory. It has water, a stove, and one entrance we can defend. The abandoned chamber crowned the oldest tower. Alaric carried Liora up every step while her breath shortened against his collar. At the summit, he forced open a warped oak door. Moonlight filled the circular room. Dust-covered telescopes pointed toward a glass dome where storm clouds raced between scattered stars. Brass charts ringed the walls. A faded blue rug showed the constellations, making the chamber seem suspended between the besieged castle and heaven. Tamsin transformed it quickly. She spread clean linen upon a long cushioned bench, heated water over the stove, and ordered Alaric to light every lamp. You delivered children before? He asked. More than your family has deserved, she answered. Now bring blankets and keep your terror useful. Alaric obeyed. Never had he felt so powerless, nor understood that love was not the power to prevent suffering, but refusal to abandon someone within it. Hours lost their shape. The storm moved over the dome like a dark ocean, shaking rain against the glass. Below, Cedric's men searched passageways while magistrates argued over whether breaking the observatory door would endanger Liora. Inside, the world narrowed to Tamsin's calm instructions, Alaric's hand, and the fierce rhythm overtaking Liora's body. She is coming too early, Liora whispered. She is coming when she must, Tamsin replied. Do not lend tomorrow's fear to this moment. Alaric knelt beside the bench. Liora gripped his hand whenever pain rose, and he absorbed her strength without pretending he could share its cost. The documents, she said between breaths. If something happens, the baptism record is behind the lower panel of your safe. Jonas knows the figures proving Cedric's theft. You will tell the magistrates yourself. Promise you will protect her. I promise she will never face this world alone. Her eyes searched his. If Tamsin makes you choose. No. Alaric. I will not surrender either of you in advance. His composure fractured, revealing the man beneath the title. I spent years calling emptiness discipline. Then you arrived and made me understand what I had lost. You are not leaving me with another silent room. The pain receded briefly. Liora touched his cheek, not as a widow receiving protection, but as an equal granting courage. Then stay, she said. He stayed. A blow struck the outer door. Cedric demanded entrance in the magistrate's name. Alaric rose, but Tamsin ordered him back. Sabine will hold them. Beyond the chamber, Sabine's voice rang down the stair. Any man who forces that door will explain to England why Ravensmere law mattered more than a mother's life. Silence followed. Minutes later, chapel bells began clanging from the opposite side of the estate. Jonas had released the carriage horses into the courtyard, sending guards racing toward the commotion. Night thinned gradually. One star appeared between the retreating clouds, then another. Liora fixed her gaze upon them while Tamsin guided her through the final, exhausting struggle. At dawn, a baby girl entered the observatory beneath a paling sky. She made no sound. Tamsin worked with swift concentration. Liora tried to rise, but weakness held her down. Why is she silent? Alaric stood frozen until Tamsin placed the tiny child in his arms. Fear erased rank, certainty, and every defense he had cultivated. He looked at the small face carrying a brother's lost future and remembered a stable boy dragging him from beneath a fallen horse. Starling, he whispered. The childhood name emerged from a memory he had not known he possessed. Elias had called him Rook that day, and Alaric had answered by naming his rescuer Starling because the boy never stopped whistling. Come now, little Starling, Alaric pleaded. Your father taught me that Ravensmeres do not surrender. The child drew breath and cried. The sound rose into the glass dome, fragile yet commanding enough to silence the castle beneath it. Alaric bowed over her, tears falling freely. Tamsin turned away to hide her own relief. When Alaric placed the baby against Liora, wonder softened every exhausted line of her face. Ilara, she whispered. For Elias, who guarded her before birth, and Alaric, who welcomed her beneath the stars. Alaric touched one finger to Ilara's tiny hand. She closed around it. He did not ask Liora again to marry him. You will both have a home here whether you ever choose me or not. The cottage will be restored in your name. No promise will be purchased with shelter. Liora understood then that his love had changed from rescue into freedom. She rested her hand over his, but before she could answer, the observatory door burst open. Jonas stumbled inside, breathless and white-faced. They found him, he said. Alaric rose between Liora and the doorway. Found whom? Mr. Fenwick. He is alive. Jonas looked toward the newborn in Leora's arms. Cedric is bringing Elias to the castle in chains. Elias entered Ravensmere's great hall between two armed men, walking like someone relearning the ground. 6 months had hollowed his face and threaded gray through his brown hair. Yet when Liora appeared above the staircase with Ilara in her arms, recognition cleared the drugged mist from his eyes. Liora. Her name crossed the hall more powerfully than any accusation. Tamsin had forbidden her to leave the observatory bed, but no command could keep Liora from the man whose coffin she had mourned. Alaric walked beside her without touching her, close enough to catch her if strength failed. Cedric faced the magistrates beneath the Ravensmere crest. Elias Fenwick survived the quarry and hid willingly. He conspired with this woman to fabricate a claim against the estate. His confession will prove it. He unfolded a statement and placed a pen before Elias. Elias stared at it, then at Cedric. You kept me beneath Greyhaven Infirmary. You drugged me until yesterday and promised to kill my wife if I refused your words. The hall erupted. Cedric seized Elias's shoulder, but Alaric crossed the distance and removed his hand. You will not touch my brother again. Morwenna said, the ravings of an ill man cannot overturn lawful evidence. Then perhaps healthy witnesses will, Sabine said. She opened the doors. Jonas entered carrying Cedric's brass button. Behind him came the maid who had planted the sapphire brooch, 3 tenant farmers named in Elias's ledger, and Dr. Bramwell Thorne, the physician who had vanished after signing the death certificate. Thorne's hands shook, but his voice held. Elias Fenwick was alive when I examined him. Lord Cedric threatened my daughter unless I declared him dead. Lady Morwenna arranged the sealed coffin and paid for my disappearance. Jonas identified the 2 men guarding Elias as those who removed him from the quarry. Tamsin presented the intercepted relief parcels. The maid confessed that Morwenna ordered her to hide the brooch beneath Leora's pillow. Sabine produced letters showing that Morwenna had purchased villagers' silence and threatened merchants who served Liora. Finally, Alaric placed the railway documents before the magistrates. The poison receipts bore Cedric's signature. Elias's missing pages described each step of the intended inheritance. The magistrate turned toward Cedric. Where is the compound? Morwenna answered before her son could. Behind the false wall in his dressing room. Cedric stared at her. Mother. I will not lose everything for your impatience. Cedric shoved past the magistrates and fled toward the clock tower. Alaric followed him up the spiraling stairs, emerging onto a narrow platform above the frozen courtyard. Cedric stood beside the bell. You think you have won? He shouted. Elias lives. Liora belongs to him. The moment he speaks her name, she will leave you with another empty room. Alaric stopped several paces away. She belongs to no man. You risked Ravensmere for a woman you cannot possess. That is why you will never understand what I risked it for. Cedric lunged, but Alaric avoided the blow. Before Cedric could recover, officers reached the platform and restrained him. Alaric did not strike him. Justice, he had learned, was not vengeance dressed in authority. By afternoon, Cedric was removed under guard. Morwenna surrendered her keys, accounts, and position pending trial. The magistrates restored Alaric's authority and ordered every stolen property preserved for its rightful tenants. In the blue suite, Elias sat beside the fire while Liora placed Liora in his arms. His hands trembled around the daughter he had protected only through messages and secrets. "She has your eyes," Liora said. "She has your refusal to be frightened." Liora opened her hand against his coat. Elias bowed his head, grief and wonder passing silently across his face. Alaric waited near the door, prepared to leave them. Elias stopped him. "Stay, Rook." The childhood name held 30 lost years. Alaric sat opposite him, and for a moment they regarded not a duke and surveyor, but two brothers measuring everything stolen from them. Elias turned to Liora. "There is one truth I kept from you. Our marriage was never entered in the civil register. The clergyman accepted payment to lose the page. I discovered it shortly before the quarry." Liora went still. "Why did you say nothing?" "Because the village would have punished you for another man's crime, and I was afraid freedom might reveal that gratitude had kept you beside me. I cared for you. I know. You gave me a home when my own blood denied me one. But kindness should not become a lifetime sentence." He explained that the family covenant protected acknowledged descendants regardless of their parents' registration. Ilara's claim remained secure. Then Elias looked at Alaric. "I am her father and I will love her all my life. But you became hers before she drew breath. Do not raise her because our father failed us. Raise her because you would choose her without any name." He returned Ilara to Liora and folded her fingers around the medallion. "You buried an empty coffin for me," Elias said. "Do not build another around yourself. Choose the life neither duty nor fear would permit you to choose before." Liora looked from the husband returned from death to the duke who had offered love without ownership. For the first time, no debt, law, hunger, or promise commanded her answer. Freedom stood before her, and she discovered it was more frightening than captivity. Spring entered Ravensmere slowly, first as water beneath the snow, then as green shoots beside the gatekeeper's cottage. Cedric and Morwenna awaited trial far from the estate. Their seized accounts restored farms, wages, and winter grain to the families they had robbed. Alaric read every repayment order before sealing it, no longer allowing privilege to make ignorance convenient. Elias recovered in rooms overlooking the schoolyard. He remained thin, but his steadiness returned whenever Ilara curled her fingers around his. He accepted Alaric's recognition as a brother, yet refused any grand title. "I spent my life studying boundaries," he said. "I would rather teach children how to cross them." He led a school for workers' children. Jonas became its first pupil and gained a home at Ravensmere. Sabine managed the restitution fund. Through every change, Alaric did not repeat his proposal. He visited Liora and Ilara each morning, listened when Liora challenged his reforms, and departed whenever she asked for rest. His patience contained no performance. He had offered his heart, now he protected her right to leave it unanswered. An April afternoon he placed a deed before her. The gatekeeper's cottage and 12 surrounding acres belonged to Liora. An independent trust would support her and Ilara whether they remained at Ravensmere or traveled beyond it. "No condition?" she asked. "One," Alaric said. "Replace that dreadful door. It has suffered enough." Her smile faded when she understood what the deed meant. "You believe I am leaving?" "I believe freedom is false unless the door opens both ways." Liora touched the signature. Elias had once rescued her from poverty, Alaric had done something harder. He had made rescue unnecessary. The following morning she packed Ilara's blankets and asked for a carriage to the cottage. Alaric gave the order without questioning her. Only Tamsin saw how carefully he avoided the blue suite afterward, as though silence had reclaimed it. At sunset he walked down the snowy road alone. The repaired cottage glowed beneath the trees. Liora waited in its doorway wearing a dress, Ilara sleeping against her shoulder. Alaric stopped beyond the threshold. "I came to ensure the roof was sound." "The roof is excellent. The Duke who commissioned it remains excessively solemn." She handed him the black ribbon once nailed to the old door. Tiny silver stars had been embroidered across it. "You once told me I needed a husband," she said. Pain passed quietly through his eyes. "I was arrogant. You were wrong. I needed food, safety, truth, and the freedom to choose without paying for any of them with myself. I understand. Not entirely. Liora stepped closer. Because now that I need no husband, I find there is one man I want. Hope broke through his composure with such naked force that she laughed. Ask me again, Alaric. He did not kneel. He stood before her as an equal, snowmelt shining between them. Liora Fenwick, will you choose a life with me, not beneath my protection but beside me? Yes. Their wedding was held inside the restored observatory. Tamsin carried Alara in a gown. Jonas guarded the rings. Sabine stood beside Liora, while Elias waited with Alaric under the glass dome. No one gave Liora away. She walked forward carrying the deed to her cottage beneath her bouquet, a private reminder that she came freely and could never again be made homeless by another person's displeasure. After their vows, Alaric publicly recognized Elias as his brother and Alara as a daughter of both Fenwick and Ravensmere. Elias kissed the child's brow before placing her in Alaric's arms. She will never wonder whether she was wanted, he said. Alaric answered, neither will you again. Then Liora announced how the remaining veil fortune would be used. The abandoned gatekeeper cottages would become safe homes for widows, expectant mothers and children rejected by their families. Each woman would receive training, wages, and legal assistance rather than charity dependent upon obedience. The first home opened before autumn. Above its new door hung a black ribbon embroidered with silver stars, not as a threat, but as proof that cruelty could be remade into welcome. During the first snowfall of the following winter, Liora stood with Alaric outside that same cottage. Through its windows came lamplight, children's laughter, and Tamsin scolding Elias for teaching Jonas to whistle during supper. Alaric held Alara beneath his coat. Do you still claim she was already mine? Liora watched her daughter grasp his ducal ring, unimpressed by the authority generations had feared. She became yours the moment you chose to love her before you knew whether she carried your blood. The bells of Ravensmere began ringing across the snow. Once they had summoned magistrates and announced danger. Now they celebrated a child threatened before birth, a brother restored, and a woman who had chosen love only after securing freedom. Alaric opened the cottage door for Liora, but she paused and drew him through beside her. Together they entered the warmth, carrying Alara between them, not an heir claimed by an ancient house, but the heart of a family courageous enough to choose one another.